Oh, questions first. Fine.
Yeah, if that's okay, before people do pitches. What is the benefit to the consumer? I can see a lot of the benefits for organizations going on blockchain. But why, say for example, Airbnb, if they wanted to blockchainize their platform, currently they take quite a high percentage because their admin costs are quite high. They take 20% or whatever, the admin will be reduced. But as a consumer, I'm paying dollar, pounds, or tokens. What's the benefit to me? And why should I care about purchasing tokens?
So if you're looking at tokenizing Airbnb, and there have been a couple of people that have talked about doing that, and they want to remove Airbnb in most cases, most of the projects. And they say taking 20% or 30% is you're delivering no value, you're just taking my money. We'll replace you as a middleman with a blockchain and all will be good in the world. And that's a very short-sighted and naive view, because Airbnb has marketing muscle and has brand muscle and has access to all of the travelers and all of the people who are hosts. So the real value as a consumer of running in and out of the tokens, you can run with smart contracts. Your payment's going to get faster. So that's one thing that they can do. And they can see all of those things that are happening, and consumers can actually see all of the transactions and have more trust, not only with the host, but also with Airbnb, because it's on a transaction that they can see openly.
Also because Airbnb won't get to make the decision if you get your refund. Because if it's in a smart contract, you've decided at the beginning what the terms are for you getting a refund if there's a problem. So Airbnb don't get to make that corporate call.
Okay, so that's two. It reduces the cost, then Airbnb don't get to govern that, make that corporate call, like you said, and more transparency. So three benefits, which are quite difficult. Because I saw a company called BitClave, they raised 35 million in 30 seconds, decentralized search engine. Google pays 35 million for breakfast, How are you gonna take on an $800 billion company? How are you gonna educate the people? I'm just like, you guys are just raising money that's gonna not even make a dent in these companies because they've got the purchasing power and the muscle that you said. So some of these are fine.
But there are smaller companies that are doing occasional disruptions. I see you in the back. I want to make one more point first. In 2001, Vodafone spent £100 million with the endorsement of David Beckham to market 3G. And the consumers said, huh? What is 3G? Because they were marketing the technology, as opposed to marketing the ability to stream football onto your phone. Oh, that I can get. So when you're communicating to consumers or to enterprises, focus on what they can do. The consumer doesn't care and doesn't want to care that blockchain is underneath it all. They want to know they get faster transactions and better transparency and more control.
Question. You framed the decision between the database and the blockchain as, maybe your use case doesn't need all this.
I framed that it should be asked as a question.
Right, but here's the thing though. Are there any sort of development scenarios where the blockchain is actually simpler than the traditional database world? Because my feeling of database engineering is once you start trying to build enterprise scale databases for consumer apps, that's really complicated actually. There's a lot of engineering that goes into that. And my question is that is there anything on the actual build of the blockchain that might actually be simpler? It doesn't necessarily have all the use case may not need all the bells and whistles of cryptography and anonymity and all that kind of stuff, but it's easier to do with blockchain. I mean, is that ever the case?
So blockchain is never going to be a full relational database. You're potentially going to have things like sharding that are going to come in future evolutions of what blockchain is. So it comes down to a buy versus build kind of discussion. And for a really, really simple application, using the Ethereum blockchain that's already deployed, already has miners, you could build a use case that was really narrow, that absolutely made more sense on the blockchain than it does trying to build an internal database, especially if you had external third parties that you wanted to be able to read and with permission to write into that blockchain. A lot of it comes down to external parties accessing the content of it and on permission being able to write to it.
Hi, I just wanted to explore a bit further the notion of decentralization and governance. So you mentioned earlier, for example, that the UPS example and Ethereum blockchain, etc. So if I can paraphrase that, are you suggesting that if any one person wanted to do a blockchain project, it's not advisable to do it yourself. You do it in combination or with the rest of the industry. And when you use the term industry, where do you stop? Because there are some really large industries. If you take financial services, for example, where how can you scope it such that it becomes manageable as opposed to a massive piece?
How long is a piece of string? Yeah. The thing about it's interesting. You can indeed make it a really tightly defined industry and a small group of people that are working together. I think if you're just working as just one individual, you're no longer decentralized, and you may as well do it as an internal project, skunkworks that nobody ever sees. Or maybe you want to do a blockchain so you learn more about it, or you're going to do a database. It's connecting to an outside group. You call that group an industry, you call that group a governing body, you call it a foundation, you call it whatever you want, that puts everybody in equal footing. This whole crypto anarchists, this whole idea that the rest of the world is no longer going to be able to take advantage of the little guy is a big driving force in blockchain. And decentralization and equality across the players, whether they're developers, whether they're miners, whether they're nodes, or whether they're actual individual kind of Bitcoin spenders and Bitcoin receivers, is a big part of that. So far and wide is part of the ethos, in my view, of blockchain. I hope that answers part of the question. Great questions. Okay, no more questions. We're all going to be around and have good conversations. Anybody want to stand up and say a few minutes about their project? If you have another question.
So in terms of performance,
Ah, there's a plant in the back of the room.
so if you're comparing databases to blockchain, obviously there are things that you can do on databases in terms of the volume of transactions and stuff. So can you talk about what are the limitations of blockchain
Sure.
in terms of scalability?
So first off, there's more than one blockchain. The one that everyone's most familiar with is the blockchain on which Bitcoin is built. 3 to 7 transactions per second is the maximum capacity of classic Bitcoin. And that is down to the number of transactions that can be added into a single block, which is limited by the fact that a block is 1 megabyte, and a block is added to the blockchain approximately every 10 minutes. Now that's also the consensus algorithm. Consensus meaning the people on the blockchain have to agree that a transaction is verified, meaning I'm actually verified as me, I have authority to spend my Bitcoin, and validated, meaning if I'm going to give you 2 Bitcoin, that I have 2 Bitcoin to give. And there are a whole bunch of ways that consensus can be done. There's something called Hashgraph. And Hashgraph goes from 3 to 7 transactions per second to over 30,000 transactions per second. So there are new versions of blockchain that are coming that actually have huge performance improvements, because everybody knows that's what they want. I'm not sure that putting all of Visa transactions onto a blockchain makes sense any more than I'm sure that it's 100,000 or 100 million transactions a day of digital advertising impressions and clicks that should go into a blockchain. So there are new blockchains that are coming. We're in version 0.5. We're not even really in blockchain kind of version 1. Version 2, version 3, in 4, 6 years, we're going to see a whole bunch of new functionality that will address the performance and the scaling and those challenges.
Yeah, just to add to that, Graphene actually does over 100,000 transactions per second, which is what BitShares and Steam is built on. And also EOS, that's coming out in June, it's going to be able to scale up to 1 million transactions per second without fees as well. So there are things coming out.
We're all waiting for EOS,
Yes, we are.
the Ethereum killer.
Just a quick.
Yes.
What is the impact on the supply chain? What is the impact on the supply chain? Because the transactions are instant. Doesn't that actually take away credit?
Right. So that's a really, really good question. And last week, I'm going to give you a parallel. Last week, all the small business articles were reading about how everybody in small business wanted to have smart contracts. Because we're like, with smart contracts, we get paid instantly. It solves all of our cash flow problems. which is kind of what you're talking about. All the money flows through back and forth. But there's a wrinkle in all of this. And the wrinkle is that smart contracts are in effect escrow agreements. And because they're escrow agreements, in order for a smart contract to execute, it has to be loaded with the appropriate amount of crypto to be able to do that. So now I've taken liquidity out of the buyer, out of the upstream, because I've asked them to load it up through the entire length of that contract. So when the contract executes, the money is there. We are looking at potentially having more kind of bridge crypto. So the bridge finance that you think of today, there will be bridge crypto that will loan companies crypto to feed into smart contracts. And they'll be done at a very high rate until we get to less volatility in crypto. But bridge crypto is definitely coming as long as there are smart contracts. And we also have to remember that people like Vodafone, Vodafone wants to write a contract with a small business that says 30-day payment terms. And they want to string them out until 180 days and let the small companies finance their business. So I really don't see the big companies, Vodafone, Ryanair, whoever, wanting to play with the small business who wants a smart contract. They know they want to get cash flow. The big company wants cash flow too. Yes?
Mention Hashgraph. Hashgraph is not open source. Isn't that the whole point of being visibility, open source, yada yada yada? Hashgraph is completely owned by a company, effectively like Ripple. It's patented. It's patented, but it's also not open source.
So, A, you're speaking about a topic that I can't speak to, so I'm not going to try to bullshit my way through it.
Okay.
I'm really much more focused on the commercial end and helping enterprise make good commercial decisions. I know Hashgraph is indeed coming. Whether or not it's patented and or locked or not, it does come down to the community on the blockchain to decide, do they want to use a black box consensus technology? And if the community decides that's okay.
So I know there's a first project being launched on Hashgraph later on this summer, so, but yeah. Okay. Reddit was quite anti Hashgraph.